All right, my name is Michaela Chase.
I'm Deanna Smith.
I'm Heidi Green.
I'm Katie Call.
Crystal Palmer.
All right, so let's get started. First question. Having completed the book, how has your understanding and perception increased on the process of international policy and law?
So while I was reading the book, that book was crazy. I loved it. Like I was kind of hesitant to start it because I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be boring. But I found myself like last night I was up until like 1 o'clock reading it.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
was like, I couldn't put it down. It was stupid, but um, I I really thought like I mean we learned a couple weeks ago how it has these huge influences, but to actually see how much of an influence what they're doing in the UN has on international law and in each country, it was really alarming and it made me want to know more. You know, like what else is there that they're putting through that we don't know about?
Mhm. At the beginning of it, I was kind of surprised about like how some leaders are just like, we come and sign and we go, so we don't really want to hear what you have to say. And he's like, don't you
Mhm.
know kind of what the impact that these things have, or to know that? And it's like, I don't even know what impact this makes on my life. And so it's interesting to think that some are just like, oh, we come, we sign, we go type of thing.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised at that same thing, how careless people were with it. Like, it didn't make any difference to them. And to me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to be more informed. Like, I need to be
Mhm.
reading things and doing things more because I just, like, whatever, like, that doesn't affect me, but it totally does. So it made me want to be better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, I felt it was kind of complicated. Some of the process they went through, I sort of had to read it again and go, I really don't understand what is happening, but I know something's happening. But I guess that made me feel like I needed to know more because I wasn't understanding what it was all about. But it's a big deal, definitely.
I was surprised how many loopholes there like seemed to be. Like he wanted to do this thing, but then he had to like get approval and try out over here, and then they had to read his talk before he could do it. I was just surprised like how many processes they had for that, and how like I don't want to say censored, but kind of censored it was.
Yeah. Well, like how he was in that room with the Islamic woman and how they read her talk and they were like, no, we don't like this, and so she was cut. Like
Yeah.
that was crazy to me.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it seems very political, like very negatively political, where people have the most, whoever has the most money has the most influence, whoever has the most numbers has the most influence. It's
Hmm.
really lopsided, and I get how one single person could back off from doing anything or saying anything because they feel so overwhelmed. I know I would. If I was in a room with a bunch of crazy radical feminists, I don't know that I would say anything,
Yeah.
but yeah, it would definitely be intimidating.
Especially since like when he talked about how he was in the room starting. Oh,
Hello?
Lost her.
Oh, bummer.
Katie, can you hear us? Okay. If no one has any further thoughts on that one, and hopefully we'll reconnect with Katie, we'll go to the next questions of what role did you see the Lord playing in Professor Wilkins' efforts to advocate for the families of the world? What lessons did you learn for your own efforts?
I thought it was cool that as he was like talking about the spiritual family and how important family was, he was relying on his family how he was like always calling his wife for comfort and direction. And I think that was the way the Lord was kind of helping him, was like, hey, this is what I gave you to help you, and now you can talk about it.
Mm-hmm. I thought it was also cool how the Lord's hand played in the small things of when he like didn't shave his beard, and for some reason it like people took him more seriously, but it was just almost like a little godsend for him to have that, or how the name was kind of messed up, so they thought he was from another school. That is just kind of little mistakes are not that big of a deal. That actually played an importance to it because he was able to get like credibility from it, and then he was able to build up from that.
Mm-hmm. I think too, even his decision to go at the beginning, like he didn't want to, and you know, oh, my wife and I have this big play thing, and like I think that was interesting, and then all of a sudden he has this feeling to go. And I know a lot of times I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's like scary and out of my comfort zone. But I can know that the Lord's like pushing me to do something. And so you should do it because the Lord wants you to. So you can just see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to the next question. Even though the book was largely about Richard Wilkins' experiences, what important supporting roles did you see others playing in his account? Why is it important to recognize these?
For this, I thought supporting roles was his wife, how he was always calling his wife, and she was kind of there for him, even though she couldn't be physically there, offer love and support. And then I also liked how his friend was the one that was kind of pushing him to go, and he didn't want to go, and because she was pushing him, he ended up going and making this huge difference. So from that, I got family and friends can be a huge positive influences in our life.
That's what I put too, is just his wife and his family back home, because they were such an influence in what he did, and like to be able to have that support system. I know just even in my own life, my support is my husband and my family, and without them, you know, I don't know that I would be able to stand on my own. And just having that, and he was like a million halfway around the world, you know, and my husband's here with me, and I just think that would be really challenging. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a couple times when he got support from other people there. I'm trying to remember, there was one man that came to him. I think he wanted a copy of his speech, the very first speech or something, and he just I guess how everybody just supported him, and he felt like he wasn't, well, not everybody supported him, but he didn't feel alone in his views. There was people that were actually on his side, and you know, he was sort of the front runner, and they were there to, you know, agree with him and support him. So, and then just all those people that were with him, like in the hotel room, just staying up with him and going through the paperwork and helping him with this and that. You know, all those people, you know, really had a strong hand in getting him to where he needed to be mentally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also thought it was kind of cool that, I don't remember if it was like the mission president or a stake president who came up and was like, are you guys members of the church? And they're like, well, we're not here for the church, but yes, we are. And I don't know, kind of almost support of the church system that we do have. Like, it's just kind of cool to see, like, no matter where you go, you can find someone within the church. And so I think it's like just an extra little boost of like, God is on your side type of thing.
Wow.
Okay, next question. Ponder your readings from A Sacred Duty. What are some consequences and risks of minimizing or eliminating family and religion from public policy?
I wasn't really sure how to answer that question, but for me, like, if you take family and religion out of public policy, like, I have no involvement in it, because that's, like, what I am. Like, you know, I am a Mormon. Like, I do have a family, and if you take that aspect out of it, then what is there?
Yeah, I thought, you know, if you eliminate family, I mean, families are foundations. Family is how we all got here. Families are meant to raise a good generation, and so if we take all those things out and we just look at the individual by themselves, I think there's big consequences just in the breakdown of the family, which we've already seen, and just I don't know, just kind of a selfish world, you know, no importance placed on having a mother and a father, and it's stuff we've already been studying, like this whole semester, all the consequences to not having families.
That's true. I think everybody can relate to having a family of one type or another. Yeah. And I think when we take away family, we kind of feel alone. Because if you don't have a family, you know, you have your friends, but they move and you don't always live with them. So I think having that as the core part of our society makes us all feel united in some way.
And like I just think and agree with Deanna that it does make us more selfish when we just start thinking about ourselves, and then like we don't focus on the other person, and then to me it just creates a whole bigger mess because no one's looking out for anyone, and we don't have policies to live by, and we sometimes are almost so naturally family based that it would just be hard to take everything out of it. All right, last question. Based on a sacred duty, what do you think we can do about it? Does the author implicitly or explicitly make realistic suggestions for ordinary citizens as well as those in a position of power and influence? Provide examples.
Well, I think, in a sense, Professor Wilkins, I mean, he is an individual. I mean, he's a lot more knowledgeable than I am and more educated and stuff, but he still is sort of just a one man, just like I can relate to him. But then we have all of these people in power and all the people that have of influence in the UN, and you see how he influenced them and how they influenced him. So I think he's just showing us that as ordinary citizens we can do something. You know, we can make a difference if we try, if we give it a shot.
I think with that question in particular too, like, I don't know, reading the book made me really want to learn more about like international policy and law and like how that all works. And he was a really good example to me, just being educated on it. Like, there's one thing to be all for something, but you have to know why you're for it and be educated with the reasons behind it and why it's good or why it's bad. And without those, like, I mean, I don't know, you've all had those conversations with people that you're like, what? They're not making sense. Like, but it's because they're not educated on a certain topic. That's what I feel, at least. They're not educated on it. And I think that's what we can do about it, is become educated on things and then stand up for them.
Well, I think sometimes you can tell those who are not as educated because they're using their emotions more, and it comes off as not very educated on it. You know, you got to use your persuasion or something, and sometimes when you're just too emotional in things, you just have a hard time getting your point across.
Well, and you can see that because you've all been to Sacrament and had that one person that stands up there at the pulpit and just cries the whole time, and you're like, what are they talking about? Like, I don't know. But when you stand up there and have your thoughts collected and you make sense, you get so much more out of that person's talk. At least I do.
Well, and there was one part in the book that he was addressing the UN, and I liked that he said his words were soft and loving.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I think that delivered a more effective point. It was when he only had like 4 minutes and they were going to turn off the microphone, whereas the people before him could like talk for days.
Mhm.
He got his point across in those 4 minutes, where those other people had to go on and on and on and yell and rant and rave and men are horrible and blah 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 blah, and children are awful, and and so I don't know where I was going with that, but I did like that part in the book. He could do it effectively in 4 minutes because he knew what he was talking about and he wasn't emotionally driven by it.
It's like he had the facts and the education behind it, so he was just able to go forward with that. And along with being educated, like our leaders, like the prophet and apostles, they encourage us to be educated in what is going on and around our town, and like we can start with those small things. And I think you can incorporate the church of just being who you are, and so you're able to have that light and encourage that. But it's also just important to be educated behind the true principles and supporting your local community or like our own country and things like that. I think it's important to be educated in both these things as well and go forward with those. All right, any other thoughts on this? If not, if you will, Diane, please give us our summary on it.
Okay, it's going to be a short summary. So in our discussion tonight, we talked about how the Lord had a hand in opening the way, and how just little things that happened for a reason, like Professor Wilkins grew a beard, and so that helped him get his foot in the door, and they misinterpreted the name of his school and where he came from, and so he was able to get in further with that, just small little misinterpretations. And we talked about how one of the biggest supporting roles was that of his wife, and he turned to his family in time of need, and his wife was always there for him, and even though they were hundreds and thousands of miles apart, she was there, and he could always turn to her. And we talked about what happens if we eliminate the family and religion, and without the family, we're alone. We're not united without families. We're just all by ourselves, and there's nothing uniting us and keeping us close-knit together. And then lastly, we talked about how it's important to become more educated, and how when we read the book, we felt like we want to learn more, we want to understand more what goes on, and it's good to be more educated because that helps us get our point across, and it helps us deliver what we want to say in an effective manner.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast then.